ACI's domain to tenant relationship. If you remember on our previous video, we discussed the ACI domains. We discussed physical domains. We also discussed external domains, and this includes layer 3 outs, or layer 3 domains, and layer 2 out, or layer 2 external domains. We also discussed that ACI has multiple flavors when it comes to virtualization environments or hypervisor environments, where we associate our ACI APEC to a virtual management platform such as vCenter, Hyper-V, and we also can do container-based with Kubernetes. There's also integration with OpenStack. Those are virtual platforms that we can use and leverage with ACI when it comes to pushing policies down into the virtual machine level. So we can create a port group. We can auto deploy a port group in ESXi by having virtual distributed switch, and ACI will basically create on the fly a virtual port group based on my endpoint group. So if I grab my endpoint group, let's say if I have my endpoint group, and this is SRVS, I attach that to a VMM domain right on the fly. It's going to auto-generate a port group with this name associated with this application profile, and finally with the tenant name. So you're going to see that specified and be centered. It will be auto-configured by ACI. The only thing that you have to do is grab your virtual machine and change the NIC adapter to be sitting on this particular port group, and there you go. The virtual machine is associated to this endpoint group. Okay, on this video, I would like to discuss what's the relation between our physical environment, and in this case, we're talking about our ACI fabric. Let me just draw it real quick here, to ESXi or to any other physical domain. And the reason why I want to discuss this is for you to get familiar with how the tenancy relates to the physical aspect of the ACI fabric. Let's say we have a VMware ESXi host, right? This ESXi host is plugged in to both Leaf 2 and Leaf 3, right? On a particular interface. And we can say this is 1.6, and then this is 1.6 here, right? So it's plugged in on port 6 on both Leafs 2 and 3 with a policy group matching VPC. So it's a VPC type policy group. So this ESXi, we want to enable connectivity to it by leveraging a physical domain. So when I do that, basically what I need to associate or connect together is the physical domain along with the VLAN pools inside the physical domain. So if you can see here, I have some order of operation, right? So the AAEP is the Attachable Access Entity Profile. This, inside of the AAEP, we associate the physical domain, and inside the physical domain, we associate the VLAN pools that we are going to allow on those links between my ESXi host and my ACI fabric, right? With that in place, we can then create standard port groups in VMware. Standard port groups, this is not the method that we use on VMM. In VMM, you need to have a VDS, virtual distributed switching, and then VMM auto configures the port group for you. No, in standard, we need to, number one, in standard port groups, we create a vSwitch, then associate the physical interfaces plugged in on the ESXi host to this vSwitch, okay? So once we have that, then we can start creating port groups on this particular vSwitch. When we create port groups, we tag a VLAN IDs for a port group. So then let's say we have VLAN 100, we have VLAN 101 and 102 based on this pool range. I want to put a VM on VLAN 100, so what I end up doing is grabbing the standard vSwitch, creating a port group. The port group is going to be tagged with VLAN ID 100, right? Once I do that, then the ESXi portion, the connectivity from an ESXi standpoint to a physical domain in ACI will be done. Okay, so this is just the ESXi portion. And as a matter of fact, I can go ahead and do a quick demo of how this is configured. But let's focus on how the physical aspect of our devices talk to the tenant, right? So how do I bring that connection or that communication between my access entity profile, which in this case is the side of ACI in which communicates to the physical aspect of the fabric, right? So we associate physical interfaces to port groups, and then port groups basically are associated to AAPs. So once we have that, this physical domain is what we attach to the endpoint group, and the endpoint group is going to have membership already for this physical domain. So that means if I decide to tag a VM or basically add a VM to the port group that we just configured right here below, this particular VM is going to be associated to the app SRV using the physical domain. You see? And, I can do a whiteboard session. I can write up here, but it's not clear until we do the actual config. So you know what? Let's go ahead and jump in. I'm going to give you the walkthrough so you can understand what I'm talking about. So let's say I don't have capabilities of enabling a VMM domain, yet I still have an ESXi host. I can still use a physical domain. It will work just fine, right? It requires a little bit more configuration on the engineer side, right? But it does serve the purpose, and we can still use ACI even though they don't have the capabilities of doing a VMM integration, right? So let's go ahead and configure that scenario. We're going to configure a physical domain, and we are going to associate one of those endpoint groups to that physical domain, and we'll test connectivity. And you'll see that, yes, you don't necessarily need to have a VMM domain to have connectivity to a ESXi host or a hypervisor, okay? So what you can see here on my ACI fabric is that we have leaf profile that includes the interface selector of 1.8. And 1.8 is my interface on both leaf 1 and leaf 2. So once we have that physical aspect active, we still need to associate that to an AEP, which then gets associated to a physical domain. And ultimately, we have end-to-end connectivity from the fabric to your ESXi host, okay? So let me go ahead and scroll down here real quick. And we are going to create an AAEP called ESXi1. Then it's asking me, do you want to, associate to a physical domain? We can do it from here, but for this demonstration, I want to show you the steps one by one on the main GUI. So let's press next. Also, it's asking me, do you want to associate to a particular interface policy? You remember, we already have one. It is going to port 8 on both leaf 101 and 102. But for this demonstration, I'm not going to associate it here. We're going to do it manually in the actual AAEP. Okay, let's click finish. All right, so now we have ESXi1, right? Once we have that, we need to make a physical domain to associate to this AAEP that we just created. Let me create a physical domain, and let's call ESXi1 physical. We are going to select that AAEP that we just created, okay? And finally, we need to associate the VLAN pools that are going to be allowed on this particular host, or it's going to be allowed between the ACI fabric and the host. So, based on my slide, you can see here that I got two VLAN pools. VLAN pool 1, VLANs 100 to 102, and pool 2, VLANs 200 and 202. Okay, let's go ahead and create a pool. This will be called pool 1, and we're going to do a static allocation, and we're going to set the range of 100 to 102. Okay, we'll press OK. As a matter of fact, I got to add the range because I am only allowed to use one VLAN pool per physical domain. So let me go ahead and configure the 200 and 202 on this particular one. So let me go ahead real quick, 200 to 202. We're going to do a static allocation, and then we can say external on the wire. Because it's external, we're doing on the wire encapsulation, so let's just leave it static, external on the wire encapsulation. We'll press OK, and then let's do the same thing here. So it's basically equal. Both will have static allocation, 100 to 102, 200 to 202. Okay, now we can say close. Okay, so now we have our ESXi host with a physical domain associated in ACI. Now, let's go and confirm that we have that physical domain that we just built associated to AAEP. Finally, what we need to do, we need to go back onto the profile for my switch, my vSwitch going to ESXi, and it's mapped to policy group ESXi vSwitch 1 VPC. Let's go ahead real quick, find it. We scroll all the way down, and this is where we select that AAEP that we just built. There you go. Once I press submit, what's going to happen? The AAEP is going to associate the physical domain to my particular policy group, which then gets associated to my switch and ultimately enables the interfaces. Okay? So we have attached entity profile ESXi1. We'll press submit, and you can see here already, this is port 18, which is the port that I was talking about. That port is going to an ESXi host, both leaf 101 and leaf 102. Port 8, it's going to a ESXi1 host, okay? We'll press submit, and right now you can see that that error just went away. The ESXi1 is correctly associated. Now, let's go ahead real quick into ESXi and do the relevant vSwitch configs to make sure that we have the end-to-end connectivity set up. Okay, so I am here in my ESXi host. I am going to select my host. Once you go into the Configure tab, you're going to scroll down onto Networking, expand Networking, click Virtual Switches. Once we click there, and then we want to add networking, then we are going to select a virtual machine port group for the standard switch. But let's go ahead and create that vSwitch 1 and associate my physical interfaces, the interfaces that I was talking about, going to leaf 1 and leaf 2 port 8. We now need to associate the other end of the connectivity going on the ESXi host to the vSwitch that we're creating. So let me click next, and in this case we're going to create a new standard switch. We'll press next, and we are going to assign the adapters, and this is the interface on the ESXi host that is plugged in onto both my leaves. Okay, so let's select, and I have both adapters 4 and 5 going to port 8 leaf 101, port 8 leaf 102 on VNIC 5. So VNIC 4 goes to leaf 101, port 8, leaf 102 goes to port 5 on port 8 on leaf 102. So, okay, so we got those two network adapters. Let's go ahead and select them. Okay, so we add 4, we're going to select 5. Okay, and we got them active, so we want to make sure that we use both of them active so we can send traffic to both leaves instead of only one at a time. CDP, we have the CDP, and oh, by the way, we can take a look at the CDP information. As long as the policy group on that interface is enabled for CDP messages, we can see the actual interface on my leaf. So let's check that out. It's kind of cool. So we have 108 on leaf 101 going to VNIC 4, VNIC 5, leaf 102, port 8. Okay, so basically gives you the real interface, or it gives you the information just like on a switch. When you do the show CDP neighbor, it will show you that information. So as a matter of fact, I am negotiating 9K jumbo frame. So let's go ahead and add that vSwitch and make sure that we have jumbo MTU enabled as well and vCenter. So let's go next. And now it's telling me, hey, do you want to configure a port group, right? But I am not going to do it yet. I'm just going to make the vSwitch, and then we just need to change this MTU to 9000. Finish. And there you go. Now we have our new vSwitch. Let me go ahead real quick, edit. Let me change this to be 9000. And now we have a vSwitch ready to go. So let's go ahead and add a port group. Let's add a virtual machine port group for a standard switch. Next, we're going to use our existing switch, the switch that we just created, vSwitch 1. Next, now we're going to label this app SRV. And for sanity, you want to put VLAN 100 because that's one of the VLANs that we have in the physical domain. On the VLAN pool that we created in ACI, we have a VLAN 100s to VLAN 102. We are adding that as the port group in ESXi. So any machine that we associate to this port group is basically sitting on that endpoint group. So let's select VLAN ID 100. Next. And there you go. Now we have our port group ready to go. And this port group is associated to a physical domain. So let's go ahead and select the machine that we are going to use as a test machine. we're going to select one of my app SRv1 servers. Let's go ahead and right click, edit. Let's find that new port group that we just built. There you go, app SRv-VLAN100. Press OK. Press OK again, and done. This machine is associated to my new port group. Okay, right click, power. Let's power up the VM. And while that's happening, I want to go back into ACI because we still need to associate that physical domain to the endpoint group. Okay, so let's go onto tenants, and under my tenant web SRV farm, expand application profiles, then application EPGs, and then we want to associate app SRVs to my physical domain. We already have association doing VMM, but we can also add a physical association to it. Right click, add a physical domain association. Let's select that ESXi physical domain that we just created. Press submit. And finally, because it's physical, I need to tell ACI what interfaces are going to use to communicate to my ESXi host. And the interfaces are basically attached to that policy group for my VPC interface going to the ESXi host. So if you remember, let me go back onto the access policy, expand interface policies, policy groups, leave policy groups, and there you go. This is the policy group that we need to find in the tenant and attach to the static port. So if we go back onto tenants, let me expand application profile, application EPG, app SRVS, and let's go ahead and first of all, we already have the physical domain associated. Let me go ahead into static ports, and we want to deploy a static EPG on VPC PC, which is port channel, virtual port channel, or interface. Now, because I am doing a VPC, let's select virtual port channel, path. There you go. It's already showing me which VPC is available, which is the one that we want. And now the VLAN. Remember the VLAN that we want to associate to app SRV? VLAN 100. We can do either immediately or on demand. So I just do immediate. Okay, let me go ahead and press submit. Okay, so basically we have all the connectivity requirements or configurations done. Now let me confirm what's the subnet on this EPG. One way of doing it is taking a look at the EPG itself. So when you click on general, so let's select the EPG, click on general, then scroll and you're going to see bridge domain, app SRVS-BD. Okay, now let's expand bridge domain, app SRVS-BD, expand subnets, and the default gateway and the subnet is the 10.150.1.254 is my default gateway. So it's a /24. So what I need to do now, I got to go to the VM and make sure that I'm on the same network from a configuration standpoint. So on the NIC, I need to make sure that I'm associated to this network. And then let's test by pinging .254 and we'll know that we're done. App SRV1, and let's confirm the network that is associated to my port group is app SRV1-VLAN100, which is the new one that we associated to that vSwitch. This is strictly on the physical domain. Cancel here. Let me confirm that we indeed have an IP on the right network. And sure I do. Okay, let's take a look. We're going to ping 10.150.1.254. There you have it. You see? Physical domain. Not necessarily we have to do VMs with VMM. So if you don't have the capability of doing VMM in your environment, you can still go with physical domain. It's the same approach. The only difference is it's more streamlined to do VMM because the ACI APIC will auto push the port group, but you just need to associate it to the VM. So there you have it. Physical domain association. Basically, in a nutshell, you have the AAP associated to a physical domain. The AAP is associated to the interface policy group. And then on the EPG, you associate the physical domain. And this is not only physical domain, it also applies to any other domain in ACI. Okay, everyone, we have reached the end of section 4. In section 5, we take a look at secure internal connectivity in ACI. Thank you for watching.